recording, and let's get your slides up.
All right. And
Give me
that's
one second as we get this going.
section of my brain that'll help me get along here as we go. I'll probably stop and answer questions for everybody as we go, so that you'll have an opportunity, if you don't understand a particular process in what I'm explaining to you all, we can discuss it. And one little question often leads to a lot more inquisitions to where we're going to be bringing our next new dollar from. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I work with my partner. His name is Dr. Christopher Muller. He is a PhD from Cornell University. That is also my background too. I taught up there for about 10 years in the 90s. And my focus was kitchen management from the back of the house, how to manage a restaurant from the kitchen side of things. So you'll find that most of my spiel here is going to be culinary. I had started early on. I was in France for 2 years where I apprenticed at a 3-star Michelin rated restaurant. And that was on the Mediterranean in near Cannes, where the film festivals were originally held. And at the time, there were only 12 of the 3 Michelin stars awarded on the planet. So it was a really very unique experience to get some early on classical training. And then I had also worked in a couple of other venues. I was executive chef in the big fancy restaurant in downtown Boston known as Lockover's. And that was something that was around for about 140 years before I took the helm of that restaurant. And then some other large resort type establishments from Nantucket to Newport, Rhode Island, which is basically where I live right now, and out on the Cape and in ski country, et cetera, et cetera. So from there, what I did is after Cornell, I got into corporate, and that was doing, excuse me, research and development for large companies. Having hailed from the Northeast, I knew a thing or two about working with fish. And so I was recruited by the largest seafood company in the world. And they went on to use me for research and development for products that went into supermarket chains that would go globally, that would go into the different types of QSRs, quick service restaurants, as well as family style restaurants such as like Applebee's and Chili's. So if you see seafood items in there, a lot of those preparations that they use are from my repertoire. So it was a pretty cool run. I did it for about 20 years, learned a lot about manufacturing technique and how to grow a product from an idea right up to fruition. So that's what I'd kind of like to talk to you today about, is how you can advance your skill sets to apply them in other venues aside from just working in the restaurant itself. And I'm mainly talking to guys in the back of the house, people who do have experience there, have a certain edge to them that allows them to be a little more adventurous. So that said, let's get rolling with what's going to be part of the new product development process for you. So innovation, the first thing you want to do is you have all these wonderful ideas that you've gleaned over the years. And as I said in the first bullet there, you know, this is geared towards chefs and sous chefs and kitchen managers and other people that come from the food service industry. And one of the great things about being able to pivot during COVID is that you're kind of forced to think out of the box. So by thinking out of the box, you have to realize what assets you already have with your skill sets. So those might be, you know how to start production on the line, you know how to prep, you know everything involved with setting up the mise en place for the evening. But do you have what it takes? You don't have customers out there all of a sudden. So how are you going to be able to attract more heads into the restaurant? And how are you going to be able to break off on your own maybe and develop a product that you could start selling at a grassroots level and eventually get it up into a zone that you're making some serious dollars at. So to start with, hopefully you've got access to a kitchen. If you don't, there's incubation kitchens out there. Ask food truck chefs where they've gotten their prep things going on. They generally have a central commissary where you can go in and you can rent by the hour, so that you can get in, and where I live, it's about $30 an hour. And it could be upwards of 50 if you get down towards, New York City, or if you're getting into the big Chicago and Philadelphia. But as it stands, the way it goes is that you can get it. It depends on what your product is. You want to make sure that you're up to speed with your. It says your internet is okay. Is that me? Zep?
I can still hear you. It was glitching a little bit, but you're still good. Also, I was going to jump in for Nashville folks. Citizens Kitchen is one of our partners, and if you would like to get connected with Citizens Kitchen, who they run, also Casa Azafraz, I think is the name, two kind of kitchen cooking food incubators in town that we work with. Happy to get you connected. So just shoot me a message if you ever need help with that. Anyways, back to you. I can hear you.
Okay. Right on. That's great to know that you really have those things going. So next slide, please. There we go. So why now would you want to do it? New products are in demand constantly. Consumers are always looking for that next new flavor. Chefs are always looking to be a year out on that brand new flavor. If you think of some of the trends that have happened over the last, say, 20, 30 years, like in the 90s, Chipotle was huge, and now it's just a very common ingredient that you'd find in most Mexican cuisines, or any kind of pepper need. Things like kale. I mean, kale saw its glory days back in 2000. So there are on-trend type products or ingredients out there that you can incorporate into your new thing. So what you want to do when you're developing like this is develop a product that is going to offer the bottom line growth, meaning that you'll be able to sell it at a better price. But because you're putting a signature on it, you're making it exciting, you're making it new, you want to get and expose your brand out there. That's the first thing you'll do after you've decided to have a particular product. So start now before your competitors start to get hip to the fact that you're going to be out there peddling let's say it's a new barbecue sauce of some sorts, or a marinade, or perhaps it's a baked good. But these unique products that you want to search out are going to be your signature and your brand. So you want to keep that in mind through your whole development process. The next slide, please. Great. So how to start? This is the way I brainstorm. I read a list of about 10, sometimes 20 different items that I know are different and exciting. And I keep them within the realm of my capabilities. You have to understand, if you're using a fryer, maybe you don't have access to it. What it needs, if you have a fryer, means you need a hood system above your cooking zone. So those types of expenses can add up real quick. So maybe as you're innovating here, you're going through the ideation process, you want to be able to understand your capabilities and sort of run them by a firewall of people, if you will, call it a focus group, and just say, hey, what do you think? Get some people that you trust, that can, and you won't be offended, think you're right. So let's, of the whole brand, I said, that what's going to exemplify it, You want to build prototypes with that, and you're going to record the formula as you're going along. And then I'll get into recording formulas in a little bit. So that focus group, very important, be thick-skinned, and narrow it down to the 3 top items. And then when you get the 3 top items, try to narrow it down to 1 and kind of pick apart what constitutes the final product that you've said. Is it, is it because it's got a starchy interior, it's got a nice mouthfeel, it's a great ingredient that not many people have worked with, but it's common enough that people understand it. Those type of things are going to help develop what the signature of what you're trying to build is. So next slide, please. So, who are your customers? When I retired from corporate, I was just standing around the house and my wife said, "Hey, you better get moving here. There's nothing for you to do around the house. I can only mow the lawn so many times." Fortunately, my best friend and partner in crime, Dr. Muller, was getting ready to retire at the around the same time, and the two of us decided to open up a consulting gig, and that led us into product innovation and restaurant development. We're currently working on a couple of large projects, one of them being in the New York City metro area, another one out in Napa Valley, where we're working with a 2-star Michelin chef and trying to get him positioned in a less expensive endeavor. As you know, Michelin star restaurants are very costly to operate with a high labor force and high food cost. So he's looking for something that will support that. So we're coming up with ideas. We build restaurants from concept from scratch, to turnkey. So you want to determine who your key partners are when you develop it. And you might be small enough to just say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to use my wife. I'm going to use my best friend. I know a guy who I worked with who's really quite talented. He would be able to help me out here for a while." Think things out, build timelines. What are your key activities and what are they involved? That means how much production time you're going to be spending building the product. Will you have time to go out and sell it? Are you going to work at a farmer's market, or are you going to try to peddle off to Whole Foods? These are all things you want to be thinking about. I'll go into calculating your cost structures in a little bit, and you want to remember what your revenue streams are. Those are the demographics of the people that you're trying to reach out to. Channels are, like I said, are you selling to farmers markets? Are you doing simple mom and pop grocery stores or upscale cheese boutiques? Figure out in advance what you've got around you, who you can sell into, and how it pairs well with the what's out there already. And you got to figure out in advance who your customer is. And that's crucial, because you just don't want to, launch a line of lemon tarts and find out that many of the people in your neighborhood are allergic to lemons. That's a crazy analogy, but it's something like that. You just have to make sure that you're catering your brand and your product to people who can actually buy it, afford to buy it. You don't want to have a pricey thing going into a neighborhood that is not going to be able to support that concept. So let's move to the other slide, and that'll lead us into creating what you do. So when you build a gold standard means that this product that you've narrowed down from having 10 great ideas, you've already had people taste it, you've identified what are the attributes that it's in it. You want to make sure that you develop this gold standard. So what I mean by that is you want to use a measurement for future comparison. And what that is, and I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit, is I work in grams. And the reason I work in grams is because they're easily converted into percentages. Those percentages, when we work on the bench in a research and development facility, they're converted easily, you can say, it'll bump the salt by 5%, bump the pepper note by, 6%. And as you tweak, 9 times out of 10, you'll be working on a computer as you're making these things come to fruition. Then you'll be able to track along with your gold standard. So that recipe now becomes a formulation. And what you will have to do after that is to look down at the finished product and say, okay, what am I got to use next year? I've got to use commercial ingredients, because when I go to blow up this recipe from serving 25 people to being able to make a 50,000 pound run, which is basically what you do in manufacturing. So let's bring it down a little bit. So you're making a 500 pound batch. You want to use the commercial ingredients that you'd be using in a commercial environment. You want to use the manufacturing techniques that you'd use in a commercial environment. So you build out the formula using those, compare it to the gold standard. So that's your benchmark. And then as you're going along, you're establishing your production protocols. You're recording temperatures, you're making sure that everything is right, checklisted, and you're not missing a beat on it, because when you go to build, again, down the road, a HACCP control project, you'll need all this information in order to get licensed. So that's what a gold standard does for you. It's a great tool. It can tick you off. The reason they call it research and development is because you're constantly rebuilding, and it might take you 10 to 15 incarnations to get that right baked item out the way you want it to be in a 500 pound batch. But it's well worth the endeavor to go through this exercise of gold standard builds. So if we could convert over to the next slide, we're going to polish this gold standard up. So when you establish the gold standard, after you've built a batch, you go back in and you compare it in aroma, in appearance, flavor notes, texture, what you think its perceived value is, and making sure that you're recording these notes as you're going along, so that you're not just leaving it to your memory. Because a lot of the times when it comes to flavor and texture, as a baker, we know that's a science. As a savory chef, we know it's more of a laissez-faire kind of approach to the food itself. So you want to have it standard. So if you are not in that kitchen that particular day, or you're not in your laboratory, or you're not on the floor of the plant where you're working from, you want to know that the guy down the line from you is able to recreate this recipe with the same attributes that you had before. So that's polishing up your gold standard. So if we can move on to the next slide. And let me know if there's any questions so far. All right. As I said, we're converting our recipes to grams. Some of you may have the capabilities to go ahead and do it, but it's not that difficult. All you're doing is using a scale, and you're putting it on the gram dial. So then you convert to percentages. You tweak your percentages. You can now easily multiply into larger volumes. Pretty much every single ingredient explodes well mathematically into a large batch formulation, with the exception of salt and pepper. For some reason, salt and ground pepper might get way too spicy, might get way too salty, and that one you're going to have to tweak as you move along, because as it explodes, pepper gets hotter. I don't know why, but it's just one of those strange things. I'd like to stop for a minute here in the middle of the presentation and introduce you to my partner. His name is Dr. Chris Muller. Give us a wave, Chris.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah.
Sorry I'm late.
Don't worry. We know you've been flapping up the East Coast. So, Chris, just to update you, I'd love you to jump in whenever you get an opportunity.
So how is everybody?
Yeah, I think we're doing well.
I'm
Happy
here.
Tuesday.
I'll jump in if I have to.
All right, there you go. So we're halfway through formulation building is the slide you can refer to. And the next one, Zap, if you could go to becoming a professional about it. What you really have to do is understand that when you're going out on for business by yourself, you're working for yourself, your high standards, you want to make sure that you're living up to them. And it's easy to become a little lackadaisical when you're working for yourself. You go, oh, screw it, I need to get something else done right now. And I'm going to wait. And you might move a little too quickly. You need to understand that it's got to be consistent. And again, that's if you're working in the manufacturing environment and you have to leave, you know, the guy down the end of the line is going to recreate that beautiful formula that you just built. Going forward, that professionalism is going to introduce you to other key regulatory people that you have to make sure that you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's for, because those are the people that protect the public. And one in particular is the health department, of course. So your requirement for the health department, it varies from state to state. Generally, it's pretty much the same, but you're going to have to be taking and getting the ServSafe certification. And in order to do that, you're going to have to coincide that with a HACCP plan. The HACCP plan is a hazard analysis of critical control points. And what that does is it tracks your kill steps of any bacteria that could be introduced in the process of your formulas and your actual build outs. So you want to make sure you've got each one of those kill steps that the health department has within the ServSafe testing. So it's you want to make sure that you get the health department approval. In order to do that first, you're going to have to have a ServSafe certification and coincide that with a HACCP plan. If it sounds too intimidating, there's companies out there that'll build a HACCP plan for you. It's really not that hard. You just put in maybe an Excel program, and then you just fill in the different steps as you're going along. If you're going to be using meat in any of the products that you might be selling, what you want to do is get FDA approval, because meats are trickier, their shelf lives are smaller, and the FDA has to approve that if they have any kind of animal protein in them, that they're processed. And that animal protein has to be either raw or cooked. They're a little tougher than the local health departments, but just by doing your homework and boning up on some of the things that they require is going to show that you've done your homework. So furthering into playing by the rules, next slide, our regulatory people, there we go. We just talked about, you want to document everything you do, especially early on, so that when you go into your kitchen, your plant, your hired incubation kitchen, you're checking your ingredients, you making sure that they are properly at temperature, that the equipment that you work with has been broken down and sanitized properly, and write all these things down. And don't look at the health department as your boogeyman, because they're not. They're on your side. They just want to make sure the public is not getting sick from your product. It says there are costs associated with these steps. Yeah, because they slow you down a little bit. You might have to get more cleaning equipment. Maybe you got to get another guy on at night to sanitize the place that you are building out of. So remember that HACCP plans are required. You have to make sure that each one of those I's are being dotted and T's crossed through our whole process here. So it sounds daunting. It's not. It's really easy. You can pull this off, but you want to play by the rules. So next slide, please. In each of these areas, in order to go into business selling a product, you're going to have to prove to the people that you're selling into that you've got liability insurance. It's not that expensive, but it's there you want to protect yourself for like a little startup you might have. You probably say $50,000 to $100,000, and that'll run you probably, I don't know, 150 to 250 bucks, depending on the insurance company that you're working with. You need a sales tax ID from. You get that from the state. You're going to have to show them that you've been blessed off by the health department and that you do have insurance. If you're building a perishable product, you have to get a shelf life study. So you want to build this out and send your shelf study off early in your process. The shelf life study is pretty easy to do. There's places and universities that'll do them for free. But if you are falling behind and you feel you want to get it done fast, a quick shelf life study on your product is mandatory for the people that you're going to sell into. They're going to want to know, well, how long does it last on my shelf, in the refrigerator, in the freezer? Have you tested it? And you'll need that documentation in order to enter into the sale. You're going to expect to get inspections from the health department. If you're using meat, the FDA is going to come walking around unannounced. Again, these are they're your people. They're going to help you stay safe so you don't have to pay out that insurance. There's a lot of manufacturing codes that are required. So if you're using a pump press, perhaps it's a dangerous type of machinery, you have to make sure that your people have the OSHA training that requires them to work that. Like a fryer later can be deadly. But OSHA doesn't really require people who work fryer laters to get that training. But this, fluctuations in all of these things in state by state. So nutritional statements. This again is one, and if you're going to go into retail or wholesale selling into retail, you have to have a nutritional analysis done on the product that you're selling. And that's going to cover off things like calories, percentage of carbs, the salt, sodium levels. Again, it doesn't cost a lot, but you're going to need it on the label that you're making for your product. There's a mandatory ingredient statement. That is what is in the product that you're selling. And you have to list in capital bold letters allergens. And if the allergens aren't mentioned, you stand a big chance of getting a liability suit against you. So again, it seems daunting, but it's really not. The whole thing will take a couple of weeks, and you just stay on it, and you'll have things, projects aligning with each other and going simultaneously in the same direction at the same time. So any questions at this stage? All right, let's move to the next slide. Getting ready to sell. So you've done all this wonderful homework. You've got the product ready to go out the door. Gee, I should have thought of this a long time ago, huh? Can I sell it at a price that's going to hit the customer demand? So you've got a gut level of what the competition is doing. You've kind of got a good feel for what maybe this would sell for in a restaurant. But you got to look at it from a standpoint of a retail buyer. So he's going to look at, say you want to sell it for $8 on a retail level. He's going to hit you up for something like, say, I'll buy it from you for $5.60. And you go, well, I don't know if I can cover that. So you got to backtrack a bit and look at what you've got as far as hidden costs, your packaging. How are you going to have it set up inside a case? How much do your labels cost? They can run about 75 cents per unit. How much have you broken it down for the labor cost that's going into one unit of what you're selling? You've also got your delivery and your storage fees that are there. Delivery, if you're doing it yourself, that's a great way to start off with in the very beginning, but it's time consuming. So the way to calculate your distribution markups, that's easily found out online. They usually go at about 20%, 15% of what you're selling retail of. So again, if you're selling an $8 product, they're going to want to buy it for about $5 and change. 60 cents is usually what it is. So, and they expect you to sell their product lower and lower and lower. So let's take a look at slide next cell. So this is something where you want to be able to understand what's the best place to sell. And starting out, I recommend that you go small. That's kind of the way I've established my little business that I'm working with right now. And I'm in about 30 stores, grocery stores, and I work farmers markets and home delivery establishments. And that's about maxing out what my wife and I can handle. Do we want to go bigger than this mom and pop formula? Not at this stage in our life. You know, I'm in my 60s, and I would, if I was in my 40s, yeah, I would take this to the hills, but not right at this point would I, because I'm getting ready to, well, don't tell Dr. Muller this, but I would like to hang up my shingle in about a couple of years. How's that for you, Chris?
Well, I didn't even know you were in your 60s. You've been holding out on me.
Hey, you like to jump in on this one. Where do you sell?
Yeah, you know, and I think that's a good question. If you're starting out, everybody wants to go national. You know, they all want to. Oh, how do I sell to Whole Foods or to Walmart? And the biggest problem with that is scale. Is you think you've got a good sense. Maybe you're making something in a restaurant, or you're making something you're selling to the restaurant folks, making a sauce or a salad dressing, and you just think, oh, we'll really hit it big. The problem with those large retailers, there's multiple problems. One is that they will charge you slotting fees, is what they're called in the supermarket world. They will actually charge you to put your product on their shelves. And that's a hidden cost that there will also be kickbacks of rebates and things that you'll have to deal with, where they're going to put you on the shelf, which department they're going to put you in. Our friend Allison Goldberg, who is in the jam and jelly business with New England Confection, she realized, New England Cranberry, she realized that they were putting her in the wrong spot. They were putting her competing against a specialty sort of like fudge and chocolate sauce when she should have been over against Stonewall Kitchens. So all of those things are you have to sit there and make sure you go through them, and that if you get an order for 10,000 cases from Whole Foods for a regional, everybody in the Midwest and the Northeast, that you can in fact find a way to scale up in time to meet the contract. There's lots of stories of people thinking that if they could just get that big contract, everything would change. And that big contract can sometimes bankrupt you because your scale and your prices change so dramatically.
Right. Yeah. So once you do figure out where you want to sell into, as I said, I go grassroots early on and then kind of expand into grocery stores and boutiques. It's a combination for me. So I find that we're very particular about where we sell at this point. You know, early on, I'd take on anything. But that was from my corporate days when, you know, more is better.
And I'm going to jump in just again, Brian. On Saturday morning, we were talking to some folks down in Miami, and this one founder I was talking to has been selling products. She's in the meat sandwich business. She's been in business for 12 years, and she was thinking of starting to package her sauces in a 2-ounce individual size. She hadn't really moved very far on it, but one of the problems is you can't afford to package things in a 2-ounce bottle, sort of like an alcoholic nip. That 2-ounce bottle looks good in your mind, and you think, oh, isn't this a great idea? But they can cost you $2, $3, $4 a piece. You can't ever recover the cost of it. So not only is where you will sell, but also the way that you're going to sell to which markets. Sizes. Are you going to sell things in large portions. Allison sells some stuff in gallon jugs to certain supply chains, as well as retail spaces in a 4-ounce jar. So you got to be, it's this where do you sell and is also part of how you're going to sell it. I
Right.
think you're going to get to that, aren't you, Brian?
Yeah, and that's where in your early costing scenarios, you want to factor in the cost of packaging. And if you do have a eureka moment and all of a sudden you go, whoa, I'm going to sell this in 2 ounces, you have to measure in the labor that goes into that as well, because it's a little more daunting. So, and then could we move on to the next slide, please, Zap? Great. And let's talk about media. This is not necessarily my forte, so I'll default to Dr. Muller on this in how best to get your message put out there.
Actually, you guys do a great job. Look at the sort of different avenues. But I'm going to guess that if any of you are already in the business, you know that you've started to drive sales. We used to be only on Facebook. You don't see as much product selling on LinkedIn, but a lot of customized programs in Instagram. You might want to think about starting a second, if you're an Amazon Prime customer, you might want to go and, if you haven't yet, set yourself up as an Amazon business account, so that when you do get ready to sell through Amazon, that you have already established. It takes anywhere from 24 to 48 hours to be authorized as a seller on Amazon, but that's a great opportunity. Amazon has pivoted to try to highlight small retailers with a direct sales campaign. You want to try to get into social media, so maybe you write a blog through Wordsmith, or you talk about your products. But what you basically need to do is work on that and aggressively maintain your presence. You can't let a bad Yelp review go unanswered, and you want to try to manage those things as much as possible. But there's just so many different places to go now. You got to pick and choose where you think your customers are going to be, so that you highlight and put your time in where it gets you the most bang for your buck.
And one of the ways that we got the attention out with this is pre-COVID, was we would do a lot of sampling. Our product leaned itself to having people in grocery stores, like you'd see at Costco or something like that, tasting a little bit of, I do butter, as you can tell, and we would spread it on crackers, and we became known in our area in about a 30-mile radius as the butter people. Not that I liked that name, but oh, you're the butter people, so we learned to live with that. And I just did see a question pop up
Yes.
in regards to, are there certain formulas that we use for delivery services, and how you calculate that? That's a 2-part answer. One of them is during COVID, a lot of people have pivoted over to home delivery systems instead of attending farmers markets or going to grocery stores. So these home delivery services are where they go around and they tap into vendors that you'd see at markets or even on the shelves of grocery stores, and they will take that retail price and up it to deliver by, I believe it's a 10 to 14%, 15 to 18 is what I'm doing. Thank you. And so we work with those figures by bumping up the price that we sell it to the distributor on. So that kind of takes the pain dollar-wise out of working with the delivery system. And the challenge with that is you got to make sure you're there each morning to get your products distributed through the various ones. We use 2 of them where we're doing every other day, basically, to get the products out to shoppers that don't want to venture out into the stores. So, and there's also some really cool apps that were developed, I think, for the Uber people, where you type in all the places that you're delivering to that morning, and it gives you a sequential delivery route so that you can efficiently move through the town or the county that you're going to be delivering into. So I think, are there any more slides? Do we have a conclusion there? I want to save time for questions and stuff like that. So let's see. Planning, of course, at least a month to get, and that's very, very conservative. You probably are not conservative, I mean, because getting to market within a month, you'd have to already be in business to make that happen. Check your competition. Think about line extensions as you develop. A line extension is a different flavor, if you will, of, say you're in the donut business and you sell only apple donuts. Well, maybe you're going to sell jelly donuts because it's the same process. So you just extend that, but you keep it in mind as you're developing. Expect 3 to 5 years on your product's life cycle. So you always want to have some things out on the forefront of your horizon there, so that you have a new plan, a life plan for what's going on. Expect snags in regulatory. That's a given. Any kind of red tape often hits a frustration level with most manufacturing. Take copious notes. We talked about that. Ask yourself how to improve the process, constantly be rethinking it, step away from the product as if you're a consumer. And most of all, don't get discouraged. It's not that difficult of a process, but you just kind of got to have the courage to get out there and strap on a pair and just do it. You got to make it happen. Otherwise, you just become that little guy working the line in the restaurant for the rest of your life.
So Brian, a question from Harrison is, how do you do sampling in a time of COVID?
How do I what?
How do you try to do sampling in the time of COVID?
We don't. One of the great things about that sampling is that we built up a following to our brand by doing 2 years of sampling. We didn't know that it was going to come along. So we do have within our brand a recognition of having a quality product. So that really helped us. If you can't sample, what you can do is you can give away small samples that a customer can take away. You can't eat in a supermarket. You can't eat at a farmer's market. You can't eat anywhere outside except if you're on the street. And even then, there's areas that are restraining people from doing that. So you can't really sample, unfortunately, anymore. Hopefully it'll change for us.
By the spring.
Yeah.
And they think you sound like Michael Douglas. You're like President Bartlett. So maybe we could rely on you to be our West Wing.
You'll have to explain that joke, Chris.
Okay, well, if you know who Michael Douglas, the actor, is, he was President Bartlett on West Wing. So, next question is, do you have any advice or experience getting into big box stores? How does someone go about that?
Sure. Not with my business, but within the corporations that I've worked with. I would sell constantly into Costco, constantly into Walmart. I had spent quite a bit of time out in Washington and in Arkansas, where those headquarters are. BJ's, the same thing. That's more of a Northeastern box store, but sure, yeah, you can get in there. You're a little fish in a big sea when you start doing that. So maybe what you're going to have to do is piggyback in with another vendor that's maybe doing something similar but not directly in competition. In order to get in front of those people, you've got to be able to prove that you can manufacture at the level they're expecting to. They pretty much dictate a price to you. They say, okay, well, we'll buy your Whole Foods. We were going to go into them, but they would tell us what our margin is going to be. And if you're independent, you don't want that. You want to be able to manage what your effort is worth. But if you want to do make get rich by doing volumes, you'll say, yes, sir. And you'll go ahead and sell them at the price you want to be. So it's volume that makes up for that difference. Can you make it efficiently and effectively and profitably? That's what you have to decide when you do those early formulations and costings.
One of the things to keep in mind is also that even the big box retailers are oftentimes have buyers in regions. So Whole Foods is a good example. They buy for a national account, but they also buy groups of stores. So you need to go in and it takes persistence. You're going to have to go in and expect to be ignored. What oftentimes happens is you'll make an appointment and they'll test your persistence by how many times they can make you come back before they accept you.
That's true.
Yeah, they'll literally test to see how serious you are if you come back 3 or 4 times before they'll actually take an appointment with you. Regional is a big way to get into some of these. Is start small because you have a local product and highlight the fact that you are a local product in a local market. They will oftentimes look at you as being advantageous for this.
Absolutely, good point.
Yeah. Awesome, thank you guys.
What other questions do you have? Do folks have? You can unmute yourself and ask them.
Yeah, let's have a conversation.
I mean, how do you guys start with the selling price of products? Like, how do you guys decide how much you're going to sell each product for?
Sure. Yeah. You first of all, you need to calculate the cost of your ingredients that go into each product. You get into adding the cost of an individual packaging, what an individual unit costs, and then you have to figure out how much labor you're going to be calculating. And then you're going to have to break down, if you're renting a place or if you're using your currently owned kitchen, how much that factors into the product. Then once you understand what your true costs are, you want to multiply that. I generally work with the old restaurant formula of 33%. Multiply it then by 3, and that should give me a selling price. Now, when I go in to calculate my margins of what I want to have in a particular zone, I have to look at the entire costs. So if a distributor wants to take me on into his, say, his Whole Foods or the local grocery store, you know, as I said earlier, you're going to see that they're going to be asking for probably a 15 to 20% of your deal. So remember, I was quoting you about $5.60 being sold for them. They'll pay you $5.60 for what you normally retail at $8. So those are the processes you have to go through. In the slides earlier on mentioned the cost. And Harrison, if you could go into how do I calculate a food cost? You'll find it on Google and it'll give you an outline,
right.
But you also got to
I think you also want to, even though it's not a great way to price things, you want to go in and shop comparative products. You know, if you're selling real estate, you can set the price of your home based on the comp store sales in your marketplace. So go out and look for the price leader. Find the one that you think is the most expensive in your category. So in a jam and jelly, it might be the French Parmesan or whatever it's called. Those things sell for $4.69 for a 4-ounce jar. So you know that that's going to be the sort of ceiling that you know, unless you've got a super premium product that you're going to bring in above that category. So then you say, okay, I can be how close to that price point, and you sort of back out all your costs to see whether or not you're in line with that. It's a very bad formula. It's called the Hubbard formula. You start with what you want to sell, and then go and figure out what it's going to cost you. That's not usually realistic. It's better to start with the costs and go in the other direction. But it gives you a check and balance to say, yeah, I can probably sell this in this market because that's what other people are charging for similar things.
Yeah, and you guys,
Gotcha.
that there's, if you use the words in your branding, hand mixed or chef crafted or organic ingredients or natural, those are all the buzzwords that are out there in the industry now, and people will actually pay a premium for it. So, and people like to spend money on a quality product.
It's an affordable luxury. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid of price. I often teach people that the single biggest decision a manager makes is setting the price right. You should not
Yeah.
be afraid of the price. Do not discount when you first open. Charge a fair price that you know will give you a profit and build the market towards it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
What other questions do folks have?
Brian's supposed to be making butter, so get him while you can.
No, what I'd like to know from people is, if we can do around the table here, is what type of industry or business you're in.
Or thinking of going in.
Yeah. So can we start with
I
Matt?
don't know if people will speak up, but we can try.
All right.
Trust me, when I try and do these, people are very shy.
Well, Harrison, you've talked. What kind of product are you looking at?
I'm a young guy. I'm just interested in how the restaurant industry works, and I don't know. I found y'all's talk interesting, so I just had a few questions.
Great. And we talk more about the consumer products than starting a restaurant, but you'd be surprised how much overlap there is today. So on Friday, as I said, on Friday and Saturday, we were in Miami talking to a group of companies. Both of them are providing a food service product. One is an ice cream product, one is a sandwich, but they both have retail components built into their business model.
Right.
I think you'd be surprised how much of an income stream the product lines can become. There's a matter of fact, one of the most famous restaurant companies, Baum and Whiteman, named for Joe Bauman, who started Windows on the World and a whole bunch of other stuff. They've just produced a report saying that the branded restaurant products are one of the fastest growing segments of the industry. Is that this is based on the post-COVID time, that this is a time to really think about mixing those two things together.
Right.
If you've been to Chick-fil-A recently, you know that they just packaged all their sauces in these 4-ounce white containers. Really ugly packaging, but they don't care because they know people are going to buy them.
Yeah.
And they just started doing that. Instead of giving them away, they're going to make people pay for them. So you're going to see more and more of that. So it's a good idea, Harrison.
Thanks. Yeah.
Monica typed in, she has Pollyanne's tea cakes here in Nashville.
Okay.
Yummy.
And is that a retail or a place to go? I see. Ancestral desserts, Southern tea cakes, created by Black women who were enslaved on Southern planet. I sell online and wholesale currently. Good. Hopefully this was helpful for you. And I saw Abigail pop up. Abigail, you got a question?
I do. I'm curious what y'all's next steps are. Are you looking to create more products or expand your butter business currently?
I'm, as I had said earlier, I'm 68. I'm not looking to really go further into the manufacturing industry. Been there, done that. So I'm just happy to just, it's really cool working at farmers markets and just chilling. So
okay, and so the right answer is that Brian and I are helping some folks create a new restaurant concept that they're interested in, and working with one of our former students who's a 2-star Michelin chef. Yeah, and one of the things we want to do is help them create a line of sauce products to go with it. But we're trying to convince Brian that when we create for them a commissary production kitchen, that we're going to expand his butter cuisines and go national with it. So he thinks he's happy being in the farmers market, but we're going to take butter cuisines national ourselves. So
that's who does the physical work, and guess who sits at the desk?
I'm the front of the house guy. No, I think that there is an opportunity to do some of that, but You know, it's one of the things to keep in mind is that growth is not a strategy. Growth is an outcome because you have a product that consumers want to buy. And in Brian's case, starting, what was it, 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
The market came to him because he had a product that was better than anything else that was available. You can buy compound butters in Wegmans and Stop and Shop that aren't great. But when you get Brian's products, I mean, how many individual product lines do you have now? 10?
We have a core line of about 9, and then we expand it seasonally.
People find you and they pay a premium for great products. It's a good market.
All right.
I actually had a quick
Matt, what do you do?
So I actually I have fresh produce right now. And I was kind of wondering, how do you deal with working with fresh produce that has such a short shelf life? And then I'm also trying to like develop various products from that fresh produce. And so just what kind of steps would you like suggest going through with that?
It depends on what product you want to do. Like say you were going to take it and convert it into soups. Is that something that might be logistically, doable for you?
Yeah. I'm working with a fruit, so it's like I don't know if the soup would be very good for that, but like puree, like I started with the basics like purees and like I don't know, manipulating the fruit from like I don't know, drying it out and like various things like that. But I don't know, like it's very expensive to move them from somewhere that's more than 20 miles away, and so that's like my biggest thing with the fresh produce aspect.
Sure. And so you said the majority of them are with fruit at this stage.
Yeah.
And stone fruit or with
it's a soft blueberries.
Oh, berries. Cool.
Yeah,
there's a gazillion things you can be doing. Like Chris was talking about earlier, we have a friend who does jams, so that's a given. Get into, of course, the syrups that you see. We just heard another one from Lucy. She said, hey, jams. So how about looking at chutneys, things that will be a little bit
salsas?
More unique. Salsas, fruit salsas. You've got a lot of, just look up blueberries, sweet gravy chutneys we got from Lucy. She's on fire.
One of the things, if you're gonna do that, Mac, what you want to find is a co-packer. That's the term that you're gonna look up. A co-packer is somebody that will take your recipes and your fresh fruit and put them into jars and retail containers. So the co-packing is where that's how you'll get your product, because you can't afford to go start your own bottling line. So look for a co-packer in the Nashville area or wherever you'll find them. You'll be amazed how many there are that you just aren't aware of because they don't have a retail face. They're a business to business supplier. So look for co-packers to help you with your things. Blueberry pancake syrup used to be one of the staples at IHOP when I was a kid 100 years ago. And that kind of product can really set you apart. Find one or two things that are different, that are not in the market, and then have a brand extension. So you do blueberries, you do huckleberries and raspberries, but in the same product category: syrups, jams, jellies, chutneys.
And then like another thing is like, how do you differentiate yourself? Because I can like come up with crazy ideas of what to make with blueberries, but then it's like, I don't know if it's too out there for people want to buy versus just making a basic jam or making like a basic, I don't know, puree or something like that.
Yeah. And like there's people on the West Coast that use berries, but they pair them with wines. So like you might have a Cabernet reduction folded into a cherry compote. And it's those types of things that elevate that next specialness above what a regular blueberry jam would be. And you get a premium sale for. So don't think they're too wild. Build a few prototypes for them and go around and do that focus group that we talked about earlier on, which is, have people that you know and don't know, rate them. Would you spend this much for it? Would you buy this? And then you've got a solid thing, especially if you're going to go to an investor, you have to say, hey, I got a good idea, man. But he says, well, what do people think about it? And that's going to start you in the right direction.
Have you thought about using bourbon as a base?
I've like, experimented with it. Yes.
Because that to me is a natural. You do a Tennessee bourbon flavoring. It doesn't have to have alcohol in it. Burn the alcohol off, but tie into the localness of a bourbon flavored fruit something. And I think chutneys are underappreciated because there's a savory component to them. They're not sweet. They've got a spice mix. So you could create a product that is similar to something else, but would give you a completely different place. So a blueberry bourbon chutney with some other fruits in it and in large chunks. And then what's going to help you is a label. You're going to want to put your face on the label.
Yeah, and
you've got a good face for a label.
There's a great in Maine called Stonewall Kitchens. And they are the premier in the United States when it comes to upscale chutneys and whatnot. Go on their product line and you'll be inspired by some of the ideas they have, and then you'll be able to start looking at how they're packaged.
The other thing is for all of you, there is an organization, the National Fancy Foods Group, and they used to have two conventions, one in San Francisco, one in New York every year. And that's where you can go and get phenomenal ideas. They also have a magazine that they publish.
Specialty Foods magazine.
Specialty Foods. And that's also a place where you can see many products being advertised for direct sale to consumers.
But they're not doing it this year.
They're not doing the conventions, but you can still go to the Specialty Foods Association.
And the magazine, that you can subscribe to that.
Yeah,
so, and that's a great thing.
That's a great way. And other things are like Yankee Magazine, or I'm sure there's a Tennessee Magazine. Those kinds of things. You'd be surprised how much you can learn by looking at the ads in the back and see what people are selling.
Yeah.
What I would also, and I work with a group called the New England Inns and Resorts, NERA. It's the oldest marketing company, conglomeration, cooperative group in the country. And they are made up of both large hotels, but also lots of bed and breakfasts and things. And when we talked to Allison, she had some luck. Go to your local bed and breakfast association and see if you can make a customized either gift amenity or resale package to place in the bed and breakfast, because they love to have things to give them the differentiation. So a Nashville, Tennessee bourbon blueberry chutney in a 4-ounce jar that you could sell to them for $4.50 or $5, and they could retail at $8. You will find that if you knock on doors, it might not, you might not sell 10,000 cases, but you could probably sell a case a month or so as we come back. Airbnb operators that have large places, VRBOs that want to have a specialty gift pack. The other thing, another good one is welcome wagons, or the people that welcome new people into the community. Love to give out gift packs of branded items that the people that are moving to Nashville or will not have. And you could become one of the suppliers for that specialty product. They love to put local things in their gift bags. The other one then from that is then go to the local convention and tourism board and see if you can get be a supplier for them for their marketing campaigns as well. That applies to all of you. Every one of you should, so your Southern Tea Cakes, an ideal thing to go and talk to the Convention Bureau people about helping them highlight your product. And yes, for the tea cakes, Tea Cake Bakery, if you're going to think about doing that, Brian and I are convincing these folks to build a ghost kitchen, central commissary, so you can pivot. If you get a tea bake location, make sure that you've got a retail facing with it, and then maybe highlight a bunch of other local products along with your tea cakes. You might want to look. There's a place that's absolutely exploded since COVID. It's called Eastern Standard Provisions. They are selling soft pretzels. They were selling about 45 cases a week, or shipping of 45 boxes a week. They're up to about 20,000 in the COVID time. They've had to move their production facilities 3 times.
Wow.
It helped that Oprah picked them, but they were in business supplying pretzels and things, just soft pretzels. What they do is they ship direct in the tea cake business. What they do is they freeze the pretzels and ship them frozen, but they're not packed in any kind of freezer pack. They just tell everybody that it's going to take 2 or 3 days to get to you. Open them, either eat them in the, put them in the oven and eat them now, or freeze them again. But they use the hard freeze, a really deep freeze of the product to use, and while they thaw, because there's no proteins in them, that's their own natural cooling pack. That just the box that they packed it in. I think that's really clever.
The tea cakes can be frozen too. Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Put them in put them at a below zero freezing, high chill. Pack them in the box frozen, and in a box of 12 or whatever, and then put them in the. They charge $9 for a $15 box of pretzel bites, and when they get to you, they're still cold. They've thawed, but they have a big thing. Eat them now or freeze them again and take them out when you want. You could do the exact same thing. I think it's a genius way to avoid packing stuff with dry ice, or even buying styrofoam packaging, because it's just a cardboard box and stuff in plastic bags. Very clever idea, I think, and they're having great success with it.
Oh, you got a brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, and we got an owner of the Loaf Bar, Mini Loaf Bakery, operate out of your home under a CFO permit, deliver. That's the same thing, using quality products. I think there's a tremendous opportunity to think of yourselves as being suppliers to other small businesses.
Yeah. Go see Mac for blueberries.
The blueberries, yeah. Make your cakes out of blueberries. See, there you go, Mac. You got to talk to Lucy. You're gonna make a great blueberry cakes, Tennessee blueberry cake. Same thing, yeah. So
hey gang, I think I gotta wrap up because I have another panel to go to, but
right.
This was awesome. Chris and Brian, thank you so much. I'll follow up with you because I have some Nashville goods to send you. Thanks for everyone for joining the call. Lucy and Isaiah, let me know. We need to get y'all in Renew Nashville, so you can join a free program we're running for small businesses in partnership with the mayor's office. Just go to renewnashville.com.
All about networking.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. That was fun.